The moon hung low over the cursed kingdom, its silver light spilling across the palace gardens where the Alpha King lay trembling in the Omega's arms. Her pulse raced, the poison in her veins now stronger than ever, reaching out to him as if it had its own will. For 5 years she had feared this moment, but now that it had come, she could not turn away. She had to save him, or lose both of them forever. She carried him to a quiet chamber in the palace where the walls were lined with ancient tapestries depicting battles of kings and beasts, magic and destiny. There she knelt beside him, hands glowing faintly with the amber light of the poison, trying to steady the flow within her. "You must fight it," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You cannot let it consume you." The king's eyes, stormy and intense, met hers. "I do not fear it," he said, though his voice was strained. "I fear losing you." The word struck her like a blade. 5 years of solitude, 5 years of fear, and now for the first time someone spoke to her heart instead of her curse. She felt the poison pulse stronger, as if it understood the shift in her emotions, the courage growing in her veins. But the danger was far from over. The poison had a will of its own, and its power drew attention beyond the palace walls. Shadows stirred in the forest, wolves howled with unnatural fervor, and unseen spirits whispered warnings. The kingdom itself seemed to sense the bond between the Omega and the king, as if the land waited for them to prove themselves worthy, or perish. The Omega closed her eyes, focusing, drawing the poison inward, shaping it, controlling it with every ounce of her will. The king watched, silent and steady, letting her guide the flow of her power while he leaned on her strength. For the first time they were not master and servant, Alpha and Omega, but two hearts bound by fate facing the same storm. Night passed slowly. When dawn's first light touched the palace, the poison had subsided, but only partially. The king had survived, his strength returning, though a faint golden shimmer lingered beneath his skin. He reached for the Omega's hand, a gesture of trust, of unity. "You are part of me now," he said softly, echoing the words of the night before, "and I am part of you. The poison, it is no longer just a curse. It is our bond." Her eyes widened, a mixture of relief and awe. She had carried this danger alone for so long, but now in his presence it had become a source of strength. Their bond, forged in fear and uncertainty, had transformed into something far greater, an unspoken promise, a shared destiny. Yet the peace was fleeting. Rumors of the Omega's power had spread, reaching the ears of those who would exploit it. A shadow army, creatures of fear and darkness, approached the kingdom, drawn to the pulse of her poison and the Alpha King's heart. The palace stirred. Guards sharpened weapons, sentries readied spells, and the king, despite his weakened state, prepared to face the threat. But the Omega refused to be left behind. She could feel the poison reacting, attuned to the danger, ready to defend the man who had become her world. Together, they stood on the palace balcony as the first shadows of the army appeared on the horizon. Wolves, twisted by dark magic, prowled among them, their eyes glowing with unnatural light. "We face them together," the king said, his hand gripping hers firmly. "No one stands alone today." The Omega nodded, determination blazing in her eyes. "Together," she echoed. They descended into the courtyard where the battle would begin. The shadow army advanced, but the Omega's poison pulsed like a beacon, striking fear into the twisted creatures. Flames of golden light erupted from her veins, striking the enemies and driving them back. The king fought beside her, his sword moving with deadly precision, his strength renewed by the bond they now shared. The fight was fierce. Shadows clawed and lunged, but they were no match for the combined force of the Alpha King and the Omega. Each movement was synchronized, a dance of power and trust, their hearts beating in tandem. At the heart of the battle, an ancient wolf spirit emerged, larger than any ordinary beast, its eyes deep with wisdom and judgment. It spoke, its voice like thunder rolling through the trees. "You have embraced the poison together," it said. "The bond is complete. Only by unity can you survive the darkness and claim your destiny." The Omega and the king exchanged a glance, understanding the truth in the spirit's words. They stood back to back, facing the remaining shadows, letting the poison flow freely between them. It was no longer a curse, it was their power, their strength, their unity. The final surge of energy radiated outward, dissolving the shadow army in a cascade of golden light. The wolves scattered, their howls now a song of victory rather than fear. Silence fell over the kingdom, broken only by the wind whispering through the trees. The king lowered his sword and turned to the Omega. She was glowing faintly, her breath heavy but her eyes shone with triumph. He pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. "You saved me," he said, voice thick with emotion. "Not just from the poison, but from solitude, from fear. You've saved my heart." She trembled, a mixture of exhaustion and relief. "And you saved me," she whispered. "From myself, from the years of hiding, from thinking I was alone forever." The world seemed to pause around them. The curse transformed into a bond stronger than any magic, stronger than fear or darkness. The poison, once a burden, now flowed in harmony with the king's heart, a symbol of their shared destiny. Days passed, and the kingdom began to heal. The forest's shadows receded. The wolves returned to their natural state, and the people whispered of the Omega and the Alpha King, their love and courage becoming legend. Yet even as peace settled, the bond between them pulsed like a living thing, a reminder that darkness could always return. But together they were unstoppable. One evening, beneath the twilight sky, they stood on the palace balcony, hands intertwined, eyes scanning the horizon. The wind carried the scent of the forest, the echo of wolf howls, and the promise of adventures yet to come. "I never imagined this," the king said softly, "that something meant to harm me could become this." The Omega smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "Sometimes the greatest curses bring the greatest gifts," she said. "We are proof of that." The twin moons reflected in their eyes, and for the first time in both their lives, fear was replaced by hope. They had faced the poison, faced destiny, faced each other, and emerged stronger, united. Yet beyond the kingdom, in the shadows of the deep forest, a lone wolf watched, its eyes glowing with intent. It was a reminder that darkness was never truly gone, and that even in victory, vigilance was the key. But for now, the Omega and the king had claimed their moment of peace, their hearts beating as one, their bond unbroken. In the golden glow of dawn, the Alpha King held the Omega close. She could feel the pulse of her poison, gentle now, steady and twined with his heartbeat. 5 years of solitude, 5 years of fear had led her to this moment, and she knew without doubt that no force in the kingdom, no shadow in the forest, could ever separate them again. The kingdom of Larithia had changed, and so had they. From curse to bond, from fear to love, from solitude to unity, the Omega and the Alpha King had found not just each other, but their true destiny. And though the wolves howled in the distance, it was no longer a warning. It was a song of triumph, of hearts united, of a love strong enough to face any darkness that dared to rise again. The kingdom of Larithia lay under a permanent twilight, where shadows danced across the silvered trees, and the wind whispered secrets of the old magic. Wolves roamed the forest freely, their howls echoing like mournful songs through the mist. Among these whispers walked a woman few dared to speak of, the Omega, carrying a poison in her veins that had been her secret burden for 5 long years. She moved silently through the dense woods, her dark cloak brushing against the dew-laden grass. Her eyes, sharp and wary, scanned the trees, alert to every sound. The poison inside her was restless tonight, a quiet hum that pulsed against her heart, warning her that someone was near. For years she had lived alone, avoiding both humans and beasts, knowing that the venom in her blood could harm anyone who drew too close. But fate, as it often did, had other plans. A sudden cry shattered the night air, followed by the snapping of branches. The Omega rushed toward the sound, finding a small village under attack by a rogue wolf, its eyes glowing unnaturally red. The villagers cowered, powerless, while the creature lunged again. Without hesitation, she stepped forward. Her presence was magnetic, dangerous. The wolf halted mid-leap, sensing the poison in her veins. A wave of strange energy rippled outward, forcing it back. The Omega's hands glowed faintly with an amber light, the venom in her blood awakening, flowing through her like liquid fire. In a swift motion, she raised her hands and whispered words older than the trees themselves. The wolf froze, then vanished into the mist, leaving only the faint echo of its growl. The villagers stared in awe and fear, murmuring amongst themselves. "It's the Omega," one whispered. "She carries the wolf poison." That night her deeds traveled faster than the wind. Rumors reached the palace of Larithia, where the Alpha King sat upon his throne, shrouded in shadow. A man of power and mystery, his heart was guarded by years of betrayal and loss. Yet when his spies spoke of the Omega, of a woman whose very blood could touch the heart of kings, something stirred within him, a curiosity. Sharp and unyielding, the Alpha King commanded her presence. The Omega arrived at the palace under the pale light of the twin moons, her cloak flowing like liquid night behind her. Guards eyed her warily, sensing the danger within her. Yet she moved with the calm confidence of one who had survived centuries of fear. The king awaited in his grand hall, tall and imposing, his eyes a storm of steel and shadow. "You carry the wolf poison in your veins," he said, his voice low, resonant, and commanding. "Do you know what you have done to my lands, woman?" "I saved lives," she replied, her voice steady despite the tension curling in her chest. "I did what had to be done." He studied her, the air between them crackling with unspoken power. She could feel the venom within her pulse faster now, reacting to him in ways it had never done before. Her heart thudded painfully, and a strange warmth spread from her chest to her hands. The poison was aware of him, as if it recognized the link that had silently bound them for 5 years. "You are not like others," he murmured, taking a step closer. "Your blood, it calls to me. I can feel it." The Omega took a cautious step back. She had always feared her poison, feared that it would harm anyone she cared for, and yet here was a man whose very presence made it stir, made her pulse catch and her thoughts tangle in ways she could not control. "Do you know what you carry?" he asked, his gaze piercing hers. "It is not merely a curse. It is a key, and perhaps a danger to me." "I know," she whispered almost to herself. "For 5 years I have lived in silence because of it. I never sought this. I never sought anyone." Their conversation hung in the air, heavy with tension, neither daring to move closer, yet both drawn irresistibly together. The Alpha King, whose heart had long been encased in steel, felt a tremor he had not known for decades. The Omega, who had always hidden behind her fear and solitude, felt a spark of something dangerous and exhilarating. Days passed. She remained at the palace under watch but allowed free movement as the king tried to understand her, and she him. Their encounters were a dance of wills, each testing the other. Words were sharpened, glances prolonged. He would ask her questions about her past, her curse, and she would answer only partially, leaving shadows in her speech. The poison in her veins grew restless in his presence, sometimes manifesting in a sudden shiver or a faint golden glow along her wrists. The king observed this quietly, never showing fear. Instead, he leaned into it, intrigued, fascinated. They were opposites and yet mirrors of each other, both carrying pain, both bound by destiny. One night, under the light of a full moon, they found themselves in the palace gardens, where silver fountains reflected the starlight. The air was thick with tension and unspoken longing. "Why do you not run from me?" he asked quietly. "I cannot," she admitted, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. "Your presence, it draws the poison, and it has been in my veins for 5 years. I cannot escape what I carry." "And yet you came here," he said softly, stepping closer. Despite knowing the danger, her pulse quickened, a warning and a thrill. She could feel the poison stirring, reacting to the rhythm of his heart. For the first time she realized that it was not merely a curse to be feared. It was alive, and it had chosen him as much as she had not chosen it. Before either could speak further, a sharp, sudden surge of the poison swept through her, a wave of power she could barely control. The king flinched but did not step back. Instead, he reached out, placing a hand near hers, not touching yet somehow grounding her. The contact was electric. "You are part of me now," he said, almost in a whisper. "Whether we like it or not." The Omega swallowed hard, feeling both fear and a strange relief. For 5 years she had carried her curse alone, and now the man she feared might destroy her was the one whose heart was linked to it. She looked into his eyes, stormy and unreadable, and saw the truth there. He was as vulnerable as she was, though he would never admit it. The forest beyond the palace walls whispered warnings. The wolves howled as if sensing the shift in fate, yet neither moved from the garden, bound by the tension that hummed between them like a living thing. Suddenly, the poison surged again, stronger this time. The Omega's knees weakened and she clutched at her chest, the golden glow spreading across her skin. The king caught her before she could fall, his own strength steadying her trembling body. The moment stretched, a delicate balance of fear and desire, danger and trust. The poison in her veins reached toward him, and for the first time she understood. It had always been this way. For 5 years it had waited silently for him. Their eyes met, the world narrowing to the space between them. A breathless silence fell, broken only by the distant howl of a wolf. The Omega's lips trembled, and the king's hand hovered near hers, both afraid and unwilling to pull away. And then, as if answering some unspoken call, the poison surged fully, rushing toward his heart. The king's chest tightened, a sharp pain flashing through him, and he fell to one knee. His eyes, wide and full of something she had never seen, pain, longing, fear, all locked on hers. The Omega gasped, fear and determination mingling. "No, I will not let it take you," she whispered. But deep in her chest she knew the truth. Their fates were now entwined. The poison had reached him, and nothing could undo what had begun 5 years ago. The moonlight bathed them both, silver and cold, as the forest echoed with the howls of unseen wolves. The Omega held the king in her arms, her heart pounding, knowing that their journey together was only beginning, and that the darkness surrounding them was far from over. The bond had awakened. The poison had chosen its path, and in that moment, under the twin moons, both the Omega and the Alpha King understood that their lives, their hearts, and their destinies would never be the same again.